In 2007, Nokia was the undisputed king of mobile phones, commanding 40% of the global market and valued at $250 billion. The common belief is that Nokia simply failed to adapt to smartphones. But the real story is far more damning. A saga of bad leadership and a desperate partnership that sealed its fate. That same year, Apple launched the iPhone, a device Nokia's executives dismissed as a niche product. "We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost," former CEO Stephen Elop later reflected. The problem wasn't a lack of effort, it was a culture of fear and bureaucracy that strangled innovation from within. Nokia's Symbian OS once held over 60% of the smartphone market, but by 2010 it had plummeted to 30%. Despite spending $5.6 billion on R&D in 2008 alone, the company failed to produce a competitive touchscreen phone. The result was a slow, painful decline and a desperate search for a savior. What did Nokia's top executives think when Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone in January 2007? They watched from the audience and dismissed it as a niche product for gadget lovers. After all, Nokia commanded 40% of the global phone market. What could a touchscreen upstart possibly do? But the numbers tell a different story. In 2006, Symbian powered over 60% of smartphones. By 2010, that share had halved. Meanwhile, the iPhone sold 1.4 million units in its first year, a tiny fraction, yet a harbinger of the shift to come. So why did Nokia fail to respond? The answer lies in its own success. Nokia's R&D budget in 2008 was $5.6 billion, yet the first touchscreen phone it shipped, the 5800 Express Music, arrived a full year after the iPhone. Bureaucracy had already begun to strangle innovation. So why did a company spending over €5 billion on research and development every year fail to build a competitive smartphone? The answer lies in the very operating system that had once made Nokia unstoppable. Symbian. Symbian was a relic of the pre-touchscreen era, designed for keypads and styluses. Nokia's engineers knew it needed a complete overhaul, but the company's bureaucracy made change agonizingly slow. Teams working on different parts of the phone rarely communicated. One former executive described a culture of fear and bureaucracy that prevented innovation. The result, years of delays and missed deadlines. Despite spending $5.6 billion on R&D in 2008, Nokia's first touchscreen phone, the 5800 Express Music, launched a full year after the iPhone. It was clunky and unpolished, a symbol of how money alone couldn't fix a broken culture. So why did no one stop this slow-motion disaster? The answer lies in a culture where fear ruled. One former executive described a culture of fear and bureaucracy that prevented innovation. Teams hoarded information, and managers avoided decisions that might fail. This fear had a price. Nokia poured billions into R&D in 2008, yet its first touchscreen phone arrived a full year after the iPhone. Money alone couldn't overcome a system that punished failure and rewarded inaction. The result was a company paralyzed by its own success. Engineers had ideas, but layers of management killed them. Nokia could have built the iPhone first. It had the talent and resources, but its culture wouldn't let it. So what does a company do when its platform is burning? In 2011, Nokia's new CEO, Stephen Elop, sent a memo to employees, comparing the company to a man on a burning oil platform, forced to leap into the icy sea or be consumed by flames. The leap Elop chose was a partnership with Microsoft, adopting Windows Phone as Nokia's primary smartphone OS. It was a desperate gamble, abandoning Nokia's own software to bet on an outsider's platform. But the gamble failed. By 2013, Windows Phone held just 3% of the smartphone market. Nokia's market share, once 50%, had collapsed to 3%. The burning platform had not been a launchpad. It was a funeral pyre. Why did Nokia bet its future on Microsoft? The decision was triggered by a dramatic internal memo. In February 2011, CEO Stephen Elop sent a message to all employees, comparing Nokia to a man standing on a burning oil platform. He warned that the company was running out of time. That memo set the stage for a radical decision. Nokia abandoned its own operating systems and adopted Microsoft's Windows Phone. The hope was that Microsoft's software ecosystem would give Nokia a fighting chance against Apple and Android. But the partnership was a gamble from the start. The result was catastrophic. By 2013, Windows Phone had captured just 3% of the global smartphone market. Nokia's own smartphone share had fallen from 50% in 2007 to a mere 3%. The partnership had failed to reverse the decline. Instead, it accelerated it. In September 2013, Microsoft announced it would acquire Nokia's phone business for $44 billion. The deal was meant to salvage the partnership, but it was too late. Nokia's brand, once synonymous with mobile phones, was effectively erased from the consumer market. The king of phones had fallen. So what became of Nokia after the phone business was sold? The company that once defined mobile communication did not vanish, it transformed. Today, Nokia is a network infrastructure giant, building the backbone of 5G and the Internet of Things. Its patent portfolio alone generates over €1 billion in licensing revenue each year. But the real killer was not smartphones. It was leadership that failed to act. Nokia had the talent and resources to dominate the smartphone era. Instead, a toxic environment of internal competition and risk aversion strangled innovation, and a desperate partnership sealed its fate. The king of phones fell not because of technology, but because of choices. So what does Nokia's fall teach us? That market leaders are often blind to disruptive innovation, dismissing new threats as niche products. Arrogance and bureaucracy can paralyze even the most resourceful company, turning a burning platform into a funeral pyre. But Nokia wasn't always slow. In the early 2000s, it pioneered mobile photography and gaming with devices like the N95. It even had a touchscreen prototype in 2004, years before the iPhone. Yet these innovations were shelved, victims of internal politics and fear of cannibalizing existing products. So why were good ideas killed? One former manager recalled that proposing a radical change was career suicide. Engineers learned to keep their heads down. The company rewarded those who didn't rock the boat, even as the market shifted beneath them. Meanwhile, Google's Android was gaining momentum. By 2010, Android had already surpassed Symbian in market share. Nokia had the chance to adopt Android early, but leadership chose to stick with its own failing software. That decision would prove fatal. Stephen Elop's burning platform memo was meant to shock the company into action. But it also demoralized employees. Many felt blamed for failures that stemmed from top-level decisions. The memo became a symbol of Nokia's desperation, not its salvation. Windows Phone was well designed, but it arrived too late. Developers had already committed to iOS and Android. The app gap was insurmountable. Nokia's Lumia phones received critical praise, but failed to attract consumers, selling only a fraction of what iPhones and Galaxies did. When Microsoft bought Nokia's phone business in 2013, it was a fire sale. The $44 billion price was a fraction of Nokia's former value. Thousands of employees were laid off. The deal was supposed to create a third ecosystem, but it only accelerated the decline. But Nokia didn't die. After selling its phone division, it focused on network equipment and patents. Today, it's a key player in 5G infrastructure, competing with Ericsson and Huawei. Its patent portfolio, built from years of R&D, now earns over $4 billion annually. Nokia's story is a cautionary tale for any dominant company. Blockbuster, Kodak, and BlackBerry all suffered similar fates. The pattern is always the same. Success breeds complacency, and complacency breeds failure. The only defense is a culture that embraces change. But Nokia's troubles predated the iPhone. In 2003, it launched the N-Gage, a phone gaming hybrid that flopped spectacularly. The device was mocked for its awkward design and high price. It sold only 3 million units, a fraction of Nintendo's Game Boy. The failure should have been a wake-up call. Yet Nokia's engineers had already built a touchscreen prototype called the Nokia 7700 in 2004. It was cancelled due to internal resistance. Another prototype, the Nokia N800, ran Linux but was never marketed as a phone. The technology existed, but leadership lacked the courage to commit. Nokia even developed its own Linux-based operating system, MIMO, for high-end devices. But instead of betting on it, they hedged with Symbian. The result was a fragmented strategy that confused developers and consumers alike. By the time they unified behind Windows Phone, it was far too late. And it's a story that echoes today, in other market leaders that ignored change until it was too late. The lesson is clear. No company is too big to fall, and the most dangerous belief is that you're already on top.